Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod. I'm well. On this snowy day, we've got a little bit of snow.
A little bit of snow. We have no snow. We have a lot of mist, though. You can barely see at the end of the road.
No mist, but the snow's going quicker than it came, I think, and it's all slushy and horrible, which is really disappointing because I was really looking forward to a proper, chunk of snow. But
yeah,
sadly, it's not there.
That is what the weather told us was going to happen, isn't it? They promised us lots of snow, so...
They lied. Lies, I tell you. But the kids quite enjoyed it as we walked back from some friends last night in the snow. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's nice. That's nice. We've done a traditional weather thing, and we have a few things to talk about in this podcast this week, don't we?
We do, and it's episode 154, and it's the 5th of January 2025, so it's our first one of the new year. So Happy New Year. Happy
New Year to you too. Happy Hogmanay and all that good stuff.
Of course we should celebrate Hogmanay.
Yeah, well, they didn't in Edinburgh because they got the weather blew them out.
Yeah, I know. They cancelled that one quite early. We were worried other things were going to get cancelled, but London fireworks happened. We saw those and then went to bed.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think we'll talk about that as the year goes on, but we've already got quite a lot of drama 5 days into this year, so do you want to crack on and do some follow-up?
Yeah, let's get straight into follow-up. So I've put one in here, but we haven't got a link. I apologise, I didn't know what to link. But I've been using Apple News Plus. I use it quite a bit. I usually get up in the morning and I just have a glance across what's going on in the world. And I get lots of adverts just stuffed in the middle of articles. And sometimes you're scrolling one article and you've got the same advert like 4 times. And I was going to say a word, but I'm not. It's just not a nice experience. And it's really put me off Apple News. And I was quite an Apple News person. But the way they're doing it is just awful. If you've got the same ad, serve it once, not 4 times, because it massively loses its impact. And it just looks a bit naff. So I'm really cheesed off with it.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. You know I had issues with Apple News anyway for other reasons, but I think that's a really good reason not to like it. And fundamentally, you pay for the service. You're an Apple News Plus subscriber. So yep. It's disgraceful that they jam all those ads in as well.
Yeah, I get it if for the people that aren't Apple News Plus, but surely being a Plus subscriber, take that away, because being a Plus subscriber gives you nothing else. Not really. Obviously, you get the magazines, but they're not fantastic.
You got to think about it. At some point, it's probably worth us having a discussion about that. What is it now? $36.99 a month that it costs for the Apple subscription for all the services, and I could cherry pick them a lot better. I don't need News Plus. I don't think Apple Arcade Plus is worth it. I never use Fitness Plus anymore. I think I use Apple Music, but it's not significantly better than Spotify or YouTube Music, and you could probably get a deal on that. And that, other than the storage, that doesn't leave an awful lot that you actually really need. I mean, it's convenient is the thing. I'm leaving Apple TV Plus off to the side because I think you could come in, binge that for a month, and then stop it. I mean, let's face it. I don't know if we've got it here. We have got it in media. They've offered some free incentives for people to come and try it recently. And you could come in and you could do all the slow horses in a weekend if you were determined.
But this is what I do with Netflix. I buy it for a month. I go through a bunch of stuff and then I pause it. And then a couple of months later, I buy it again. Because for me, there's not enough on that. And I could probably do that with Disney. But Disney do an annual plan where it's marginally better to buy it annually. And I could probably do it with Prime. I could alternate, and I'd rather probably do that. So you're right. But you're right, we should probably do an Apple One review.
We should, and if you did want to drop out of the walled garden, what are your alternatives? How can you replace these Apple services with other things? Because I think that's got to be the whole story, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's tricky, I think, because I've got my whole family on like Apple Music, and they do use a little bit of arcade, but probably not enough to warrant it. I could just buy the games.
Yeah, there is that. Even Balatro you can get separately.
Yeah, that's probably a segment for another day. I'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and it is disgraceful that they jam Apple News Plus so full of ads, because I guess they're only sort of thinking for that is they can double their money on it, or they're not making enough through people subscribing to it, and therefore they've got to jam it full of ads.
100%. I think that is exactly what it is.
Another thing that's not working out too well for them would be the Vision Pro, and we did talk about it. This is in follow-up and not news for the good reason that we talked before about them stopping production because the demand didn't seem to be there, or pausing production, I think is the right word. But now the news has come that they're actually stopping production as well, and I got to say, I don't find that this surprising.
I don't. I'd really hope though that they were going to start dropping the price on it. Get it $299 or something. Just start getting the tide turning in the right direction, and you'll start getting adoption. Because I think if they did something like that, you need to get some more people on it because I think this has got a future, and it may be sunglasses in the future, but we've got to go through all these developer chunky versions to slim it down, get the ecosystem there, learn from it, like they did with the watch. The first watch doesn't look anything like, software-wise, what the watch looks like now. But the hardware was there. They got a lot right on the hardware, and they just need to keep chipping away at it. So I'm a little disappointed if that's the case.
Yeah, I think it's a slightly complicated story, isn't it? I also feel, without having the content, obviously they were pushed to release this for some reason that I'm not sure about, but it's the developer story. That's the thing that's missing here, is they've hurt developers with their attitude towards them and the way that they've treated them over the last few years, to say nothing of their appalling documentation when it goes to how do APIs work together. And the fact that you have to buy a £3,500 headset, develop an app that Apple may not choose to bless and let you release, and then how many people are you going to be able to sell that app to? I think it's a really tough ask for people.
Agreed. It is challenging, and the cost of entry is so much higher than any other hardware they've done, and they've kind of released the developer kit and the public consumable kit all in one go, which is a bit odd, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they could definitely have done a better rollout of this, couldn't they?
Yeah, 100%.
Moving on, Apple Intelligence is getting even more love from the world. We talked about the BBC before, complaining to Apple about the way it represented the story of the chap that shot the CEO of United Healthcare in the States, saying he'd shot himself, and he hadn't. It was just a hallucination. But there's more and more people piling against Apple, talking about these errors that are building up in the notification summaries. A new summary from Apple falsely claimed darts player Luke Littler won the PDC World Championship before he'd even played in the final. Now, he has actually won since, but this was before he played in the final.
It's come true, but yeah. It's, again, though, a bit like the Vision Pro. I know other tech companies are doing all the AI stuff, but Apple could have just stood their ground another year, and the world would have carried on, and they could have refined it and do what Apple do best, is come late to a market, but do it better. And I think there's quite a lot they are doing well, which you don't need to subscribe to it. They're building it into their OS, tick, 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 tick. But they need a lot more refinement and a lot more improvement. But they're not. They don't seem to be doing it. They don't even seem to be acknowledging it, which I don't know. And I think that hurts Apple.
I think it's dangerous, and it's not the only thing that's hurting Apple at the moment. I mean, you and I have both expressed our discontent with a number of things, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more later. But yeah, there's a lot of sort of unnecessary things that they're getting wrong. And fundamentally, with these LLMs, they may not be able to fix it. They hallucinate. This is the way that they work.
Yeah, it is true. And even though in their machine prompting, they have that bit at the start or near the end where they go, don't hallucinate, as part of their prompt to it. But yet here we are with that. And how damaging could this be? Because this is going out to millions, tens of millions of people, if not more. And yet they're seeing this. And they may just glance at the phone. Oh, right, he's already won it. That's that then. Because if people don't know the timing, and this could be a lot worse if it was something, maybe, they could forecast somebody dying or something and get it completely wrong.
Well, the next story down, another AI notification summary falsely told BBC Sport app users that tennis great Rafael Nadal had come out as gay, and he hadn't. You're telling people who have committed suicide. For some people, particularly in that culture, that could have been a real problem for Rafa Nadal or not. Yeah. I don't know, but this is not great. Not
great at all. But they're not even acknowledging it, or it's not even a "we're sorry, we're working on it" kind of thing, like a statement. But I find that very bizarre.
Or if it's just the BBC, for the BBC app, don't allow notification summaries. That would be the answer.
Yeah, just bypass it for now until you get it sorted.
Yeah. Another own goal by Apple was the unintentional in inverted commas recording of private conversations. So there was a whole thing about this with Alexa potentially recording families' conversations, the Google Home's doing it, and then Apple actually have been doing it with Siri as well. And they've actually settled in court $95 million with a lawsuit that was alleging Siri was routinely recording private conversations, and then these were shared with other parties for targeted ads. Now, on the surface, well done Apple, you're fessing up. But on another level, isn't this completely against Apple's whole privacy standpoint? Trust us, we're more secure, the little Apple with a padlock. Trust us with your photos, trust us with everything. This is another egregious breach of people's privacy.
Agreed, and especially when we do everything on device, we don't send your stuff back to the server, it's all encrypted, It does spit in the face of their policy. It's not good, is it? Like, how was this allowed through? Surely this didn't pass the policy hurdle at at gate one where it should have been checked.
Yeah, and this, when you think of other things that have happened as well, such as the analytics reporting that went back as well, even if you checked don't send back analytics, it was still sending back analytics. There's a lot of little minor things, and maybe some of them not so minor, are really beginning to add up against Apple's privacy standpoint. And it really gives a lie with what we were talking about before with the advertising as well, is that we're not Facebook. We ask Facebook not to track. All that stuff when we were asking Meta to change their app, that they wouldn't share contacts and how it was going to be damaging because of this kind of tracking. And Apple are doing it themselves. It's okay when they do it, is it?
It's awful. I don't like it. It's a very two-faced view from Apple, I think.
Very, very. Not a two-faced view, but something that's probably upsetting Microsoft quite a lot. Apparently Windows 10 is still the dominant Windows operating system in the world, with only a few months of support left.
That's blown my mind a little bit, but then it's always slow iterating from one version of Windows to another, and it is frustrating with Windows 10 because Microsoft did go, this is the last version of Windows and we're just going to patch it forever kind of thing, and then obviously they then moved the goalpost and released Windows 11. I'm surprised by this because I work in an organisation where we're 100% at Windows 11. We were quite an early adopter. We just got it done, and it was a non-event, the upgrade, to be honest with you. So I'm surprised that this is going on as long as it has, because Windows 11, I think, has been relatively well received. I know we had issues with Windows 8, and every other version of Windows seemed to be problematic, but actually Windows 11 seems to have landed pretty positively. So I'm surprised that the adoption's so slow.
Yeah, pretty positively is fair. I think if you had hardware that would run Windows 10, you were pretty much there with Windows 11, with the exception of the Trusted Platform module. I think that's what it is, the TPM that's required to run the operating system. Not all computers had them, and some device manufacturers, motherboard manufacturers, were leaving the modules out to cost save. So you wouldn't necessarily pass the hardware test, and then there was a shortage of third-party ones to install it to allow Windows to install. I think that's a fairly minor thing. To me, it might be enterprises going, well, we're only going to do this slowly because we don't upgrade on the first day. So, there's still a lot of Windows 10 stuff out there. There's things like the NHS where it may not be approved to be run on another version of Windows because the medical device manufacturer needs to go through all of its testing, which will hold it up as well. And then I think there's a lot of cruft came along with Windows 11 as well. I know gamers were complaining about the fact that they were getting less frame rates with early versions of Windows 11 than they were with latter versions of Windows 10, so it didn't switch. And then when you threw into that Copilot and the screen recording and all the other things that have come along with Windows 11 since, I can understand why there's a certain reservation between end users to actually switch to the latest and greatest.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. Yeah, I get it. Like I say, I'm just surprised, I think, because it's been out for so long. I mean, we're good 3 years in, if not coming up to 4. I can't remember when the release date was, but I know it was a good 3 years ago because I remember we upgraded in 22. So it's a long time, and we're a reasonably big organisation. So I'm just surprised by it.
Yeah, I mean, these things happen all the time, don't they? I think that's all we've got in follow-up, Chris, unless I've missed a story.
No, I think that's it. Should we dive into news?
Yeah, let's dive into news, and I really don't want to talk about this first story.
Again, this is the two faces of Apple, isn't it? We've just had it on the privacy piece with the Siri recordings, and now we've got Tim Cook donating $1 million to Trump's inauguration.
Yeah, so this is problematic in lots of ways for me. $1 million to the Trump inauguration. Fine. He's denoted this personally, not from Apple, and I don't know if that's to make some sort of division between Apple doing it corporately and him doing it. He has said he wants to do it because it's a great American tradition, and he wants to support this. He didn't do it for Biden, so he's not that bothered particularly. He didn't do it for Trump the first time around, so he's not that bothered particularly. And my discomfort with this, and I don't know enough about American politics, is it feels a bit payola. It'd be a shame if something happened to your nice company there, Tim Apple. So they're fronting up, and all the other tech CEOs seem to be doing the same thing, and it makes me deeply uncomfortable that the incoming administration or the individuals such as Tim Cook might want to contribute in this way. Thoughts on this?
I like the way you said it. Tim said it's a tradition, but yet he's never partook in the tradition before, which doesn't make it a tradition to him if he's never done it. It just feels like you're greasing the slippery pole a little bit because you're trying to get him in with Apple. It's interesting that the photo on the article that you've got there, Tim's got a suit on. Tim famously never wears a suit unless he's meeting Mr. Trump. And obviously Trump always has a suit on. That's his de facto look. I just don't think this sits right with Apple's view, but I can see why they'd want to do it as a corporation. But then they've not done it as a corporation. Tim's done it individually, which feels, again, very two-faced.
Yeah, and I really feel like it's like some sort of protection racket that, the new crime organization moves into the neighborhood and you go around and you're like, you'd be ashamed something happened to Apple. I feel like I'm going to call him Tim Apple from now on, frankly, because Marco Arment said something on Mastodon that I kind of agreed with, is that we always make excuses for Tim, that obviously he doesn't have these morals and ethics because of who he is. Yeah, he runs the biggest company in the world, but he's obviously dealt with adversity in his life from having to, as an openly gay CEO. This is not something that's sort of fairly commonly accepted or published in America, and he's lauded for that, and rightly so. But at the same time, maybe this is just the way he feels. Once you get beyond a certain point of wealth and income and expectation and the way the world treats you for who you are, this is maybe just who you become. And we see it with Elon, and we see it with Bezos, we see it with Trump, we see it with Zuckerberg. All of them behave the same way, and it's disgusting, frankly.
Agreed, but I think they have to. Otherwise, they will. Otherwise, the big baby in the White House is going to complain, kick them out, whatever it may be, not treat them favourably, and that's why they're doing it.
But you see this with the big tech companies, and you see it with media companies such as the Washington Post and others. And people are resigning from the Washington Post because of the way this has gone. They were resigning leading up to the election, and they've resigned since. Isn't this how fascist states start? You control the media, so you've got this, and then you control the technology of the day. So be that Volkswagen or whoever the company was in Germany back in the time, it's electronic organizations at this point, and America has a monopoly on them. And this I find deeply worrying on lots of levels, because you have that state influenced control going all the way down. We see it in Russia with the oligarchs. This is deeply concerning to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not comfortable with it one iota at all.
And we're not the only ones. Riley of, what's the name of the application? AltStore fame, has also come out and said, Apple breaking EU law by rejecting the Mac Mini notarization. Today, Tim Cook donates $1 million to Trump. Remember when Apple had morals.
It's pretty good.
He's absolutely on the money as far as I'm concerned, that, that they can pick and choose what they want to be in the EU and with developers, but comes to America, yeah, here you go, here's $1 million, Donald.
Is Riley now going to get barred from the App Store because he's spoken in favour against Tim? Because it's the same thing, isn't it, of Tim greasing the the Trump administration wheels, and now is Riley going to have to do the same?
Possibly. But then, very interesting to me, is John Gruber has actually come out against this as well. So we've said before, Gruber is basically a shill for Apple at this point. Sorry, John.
Has been a lot of times. I like the guy, I generally do, but sometimes I don't always agree with what he says.
But in this case, Donald Trump tried to overthrow the legitimate results of the 2020 election and to remain in office, and as part of his efforts inspired a violent mob of insurrectionists, and nothing has happened to him as a consequence of that. In fact, he's back in power, right? And now, Tim Apple seems quite happy to support this character. And when you've got somebody who's cut him through the middle and he bleeds apple, as Gruber saying this is the wrong thing to do, this feels like a bit of a seismic shift in the community and their view of the company. Yeah,
it's not good at all, is it? And for very long-standing Apple supporters, it's not a good look at all.
Absolutely not. Should we talk about something else that's not a good look for Apple?
Yeah, go on then.
I know, we've got a few. And this is the revelation that on iOS 18, your Photos app on your iPhone is actually phoning home and sending details of your photographs back to Apple.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you go into one of the Photos settings, there's an option at the bottom that says Enhanced Visual Search, which is with a toggle slider. And under that, it says, allow this device to privately match places in your photos with a global index maintained by Apple so you can search by almost any landmark. So we'll check all your photographs to see if the London Bridge is in it and send it back to Apple.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Chris is considering. I've turned it off. It was on by default. I never checked this box in the first place. I've turned it off. So this also...
I didn't know it was there.
Yeah, it's... as we talk about Apple and their sort of creeping, walking back on their security and privacy principles, this is just another egregious example of that.
Yeah, that is true. And they should signpost that, shouldn't they?
It should have been off by default. If you want to help their global community recognize landmarks, fine, but that should be an off and turn it on, not an on and turn it off.
And do you have to turn this on and off on all your devices? Because I'm looking at one Mac here, I've got another Mac there, I've got phone, my iPad.
Possibly.
Okay.
It's It's definitely on the phone though. So like I say, I've switched it off. But is this something now that I need to check in every iOS update that they've not knocked it back on, as Microsoft would do with their analytics reporting?
Yeah, and are there other toggles in other apps?
Yeah. Anyway, the developer that found it, it was Jeff Johnson. We've linked to in the show notes, and I think it's worth a read of his article. Actually, it is on macOS Sequoia and enabled by default.
They should definitely have had a splash screen for that.
And again, nothing from the company. All this furore is going on social media and all the rest of it, and it's one thing of many that they've got going on at the moment, and nothing from the company. And this is beginning to actively hurt them.
Yeah, because on this one, they could have come out and gone, look, okay, I can see you're a bit upset about this setting, but it does this anonymization, if there's anybody in it, we are literally just looking at landmarks. I don't know, it feels like they could have done a bit more around this, because they may have done it in a really good way.
They can do a lot more about this. Do you want to tell us about Apple Fitness Plus and its integration?
Yeah, so I found this one interesting. So on the 3rd of Jan, late last week, which was Friday, Apple come out and go, right, we're now going to integrate with Strava. And I was like, why have you left it to the 3rd of January to announce that? Because there's going to be a lot of people that maybe have got Christmas presents that are fitness related. And this might have, swung what they went for over the Christmas period a little bit. And then they've announced a whole bunch of new content coming. But I just don't get why they didn't announce it earlier, because there's going to be a lot of people that do the January thing where they're going to be an amazing athlete this year. And I just feel like, why has Apple left it so late to announce it? I just don't get why they didn't drop this in December. I just find their whole way they do some of this, keeping it really quiet until the last minute and then shout about it, because it's probably been in the canon ready to go for quite a while. But they've left it to the 3rd of Jan to announce it. I just find it bizarre.
Yeah, it's probably quite harmful. I wonder how many people actually use Fitness Plus. I wonder, that integration. Is this the beginning of the end of Fitness Plus, where they just shove it all towards Strava and integrate it?
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fair
interesting.
Point. But there is loads of content in Fitness Plus. If you're into it, there is loads in there that is pretty good.
Oh yeah, I've used it. I think it's quite a good service, I got to say. I don't use it enough, obviously, as I sit here growing in weight following Christmas. But it's quite a good service. It's quite well done. And I think this kind of integration is good. It's good that they should work with fitness companies and Peloton and whoever else is out there. That those integrations should exist. But as you say, it's quite an odd way of announcing it.
It's bizarre to me. And they haven't really done much integration with third parties. I just find it odd, like I say, that they've just announced it on that date. And I do find that with Apple, they could have just signposted things a little bit earlier. I think that would be a better way to go.
Do you remember the Millennium Bug?
Yeah.
So this was computers were unable to tick over into the new year. Well, this is affecting LA deputies' police cars in the United States. So they've got a glitch in their patrol car computers that's not letting them be sent to crimes because of a glitch within the 911 call network on their computers in the cars. That's really not a great thing.
Wow. That's quite a thing, isn't it? It's very like the Millennium Bug, isn't it?
That was the first thing I thought about when I read this story. So the system thinks it's July 2003 because it couldn't possibly be 2025.
Seems odd that 2025 is causing this sort of pain. You'd have thought we'd have got over all that.
I think this has happened if you're running a version of Solaris OS from back in the day as well, which you and I were both taught a little bit on when we started computer science. Solaris won't let you go to 2025 either.
Wow, okay. Weird, isn't it, that's a date, it's problematic, I guess.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Something that might make a little more sense is Nick Clegg stepping down as Meta's sort of person, the PR person. So after he was Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, he got a job with Meta as President of Global Affairs. He's stepping down, with the timing being very interesting that they're appointing a Republican, or an ex-Republican who knows Trump instead to work for Meta. And to me, this just feels like exactly what we were talking about with Tim. This is Meta getting their ducks in a row for their dealing with the Trump administration.
100%, because Nick and Trump probably do not align, and Clegg's probably doing the right thing. The question was, though, did he walk out or was he asked to leave? Because you never know at that level. We'll
never know. I mean, Nick Clegg's the kind of person who might actually write an autobiography at some point, and maybe we will find out about that. How truthful it will be is a whole other thing. I don't know if I'd trust much that came out of Nick Clegg's mouth following the shambles that was Brexit, and I blame him as much as anything for Brexit. So maybe I'm showing too much of my political leanings here, but I understand why Meta have done it. It feels very cynical, but I understand why they've done it.
Yeah, they're clearly looking for the next 4 years of pro-Trump, massive growth, I'm guessing, and this is how they're going to do it.
This is how they're going to do it. One thing they're going to have to sort out before they do that, however, is deal with a hack at the US Treasury. So this is a sequence of a number of hacks that have happened in the United States recently. So we know that the messaging apps have been compromised. All the networks have had their messages read. We know that there were Chinese hackers inside of Microsoft due to a security key we talked about in this podcast last year. And now, China-based hackers have breached US Treasury workstations. What could go wrong with having another government inside of your finance for your country?
It's a bit of a concern. Not a great look, is it, at all? Like, surely those things should be bulletproof.
You would have hoped so. I mean, there's not much more to say about this other than, come on, step up your cybersecurity in the United States. I mean, I'm sure it's just as bad in the United Kingdom and we're just not being informed about it. I'm not blaming the States for this. I think there's just a lot of very advanced cybersecurity work that's not going on at the highest levels of government because of who ends up in those jobs, as previously discussed.
Well, it kind of goes back to the 2025 bug that we just spoke about. There's lots of legacy stuff somewhere in various organizations that can be a backdoor in, because it's hard to patch everything. We talked about Windows 11 rollout going slowly. It's hard for organizations to maintain their estate, and it can be hard to get buy-in from above the board, because it's seen as, well, why do we need to do it if we're just upgrading Windows from A to B and nobody's getting it? And I think it's a lot of money. We might have to buy new hardware. And especially this could be systems, and so it's hard to get that buy-in until something like this happens, and that's when you turn around and go, well, we could have avoided this if we were a little bit more proactive.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and you're right that they need to be more proactive with these things, because it's so easy for information to leak out, to leave an access open somewhere. Physical security, cyber security, all need to be considered as part of this, and unfortunately they need to step it up unless they're quite happy giving all this stuff away to China.
It's awful, isn't it? China probably know more about them than they do themselves.
Certainly with the next administration. A company that is about to has given away a lot more than we were expecting to is Volkswagen. So apparently they've been ditching the location of all their latest generation of ID products onto the web, and you can go onto a map, a very accurate map, and find out where people have been living, driving to, commuting, performance data, all this kind of stuff, just freely available and unencrypted for these EVs. That's appalling.
They already had enough grief for these EVs where they didn't have buttons, and they haven't landed great, and the design's not been Volkswagen's best. And I'm normally a big pro-Volkswagen person, but this feels like another home goal, doesn't it? It's not quite Dieselgate, it's like Location Gate.
Well, remember the ID4, they had stopped selling it in America because the door would open when you went around the corner. Never mind everything else. So they're fundamentally insecure because of the tech that's on board. They're not very well built. I wasn't very impressed when I drove one. I've been looking at cars a lot recently. And you're right, stylistically they're terrible. The only one that looks okay is the ID Buzz.
I would agree with that statement, and I didn't know if you would, but yeah, I would agree with that. I quite like the look of the ID Buzz, which is the blue van in the middle. I actually think they've got a bit of retro going on there and a bit of modern, and I think they've done a good job, but the rest of them I'm not a big fan of at all, which is a shame, because like I said, I've had many Volkswagens, and I think historically very good build quality, looked good, and I don't know what's happened.
Yeah, I'm going to say the word, it's creeping in shitification of everything is what I think it is, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, there is that, I guess.
There is that. I think that's it for news. That was quite a lot of news, and I think the Trump Tim Cook story at the start was worth going into in a bit of detail because of how uncomfortable it makes me. But yeah, not great stories to start the new year.
No, there hasn't really been anything amazing. Maybe that'll come next week. We've got CES next week, so maybe we'll have some monitors and big TVs that we're never going to get.
Yeah, we'll talk about that kind of stuff instead. Should we do some media?
Let's do the media.
So tell us about Apple TV Plus.
So Apple TV Plus are doing a free weekend this weekend, which again I find a little odd. Like, I don't know, they announced it. They said something's coming, kind of thing, and then they said, "Oh, this is what we're doing. It's a free weekend." And I would have thought they would have done a free weekend and dropped a new TV show to really, get you going, maybe. But maybe I'm wrong. But I just find it odd. Again, the lack of detail coming out of Apple. I just find their mysterious ways of working a bit bizarre in this day and age.
And that's got to be harmful, right? You want people to try the service. You want to publicise this as much as possible. Why don't you lead up to it weeks in advance going, hey, we're going to have a free weekend after New Year. Finished with all your Christmas viewing on Disney? Give Apple a chance and make a massive advertising push for it.
Yeah, it seems really bizarre. I was chatting with some friends last night. Nobody knew about this, and yet there's probably content on here they do want to watch. I just find it all really odd. But there's loads of great content on Apple TV, and people should go and watch it because there are some really stellar shows on there. And you can get it on a lot more devices. I think they've really struggled because they handicapped it at the start with how you could access Apple TV Plus. They then called it Apple TV Plus when they had other products called Apple TV. And then they haven't really come back from that. And people think you need Apple devices to watch it and what have you. And you don't. So I do think they're struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They are struggling a little bit. And you're right, the naming is bad. How do people get on it? When people try it, they really like it. I recommended it to a couple of my team because they had 3 months free Apple. One of them bought an Apple device. What should I watch now? I'm on Apple TV. He's a bit of a sci-fi geek, so I said watch For All Mankind. He's binged it, from start to finish, beginning to end. He's done the whole thing, and I think he's desperately looking for more content. So if you can get the eyeballs there, people are going to enjoy the content, and they're going to watch it, and they'll pay for that kind of thing as well, I would have thought, in the longer run. So, yeah, bizarre decision.
Yeah, agreed. I think some of their marketing is still their marketing that they would have done 20 years ago, whereas they need to move on.
Yeah, but their new marketing's not very good, as we've discussed a bit.
Yeah, agreed on that one, actually.
Some good news that's coming for me, possibly, is apparently there's a Blade Runner 2099 TV series. Who knew this was happening?
I didn't know this was happening. I'm not surprised, though. We're seeing a lot of this, aren't we, at the moment? We've had Lord of the Rings. There's talk of a Harry Potter one. We've had Dune. So it feels like this is the future now. We're going to turn all our films into TV shows.
Yeah, well, I don't mind expanding universes out. We'll talk about Dune in a minute. I love the Blade Runner films, and there was an animated show that came along at the same time that was really impressive as well. Oh. So the original Blade Runner 2047, 2057, whatever the last film with Harrison Ford in was excellent as well, and Ryan Gosling. This is going to star Michelle Yeoh, who is a treasure, so I've got high hopes for that. She has been in some rubbish as well, mine, so just the fact that she's in it isn't a guarantee of quality, but let's hope that this is going to be decent.
The previous one was Blade Runner 2049.
2049, there we go. Other than Michelle Yeoh, I don't know many of the other people involved with it. But apparently, it's been executive produced by the guy involved with Shogun, so that gives me some hope that it's going to be good. We're going to talk about Shogun later. But yeah, there we go. Blade Runner TV show, if you didn't know.
Cool. I'd be happy to give it a go. I'm just worried there's so much trying to vie for my eyeballs that I'm going to struggle. That's the problem I think I have.
I think that's reasonable. One thing that got my eyeballs this festive period was SAS Rogue Heroes. Season 2 landed on the BBC on, I want to say New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, something like that. It's terrific. It's loosely based on the real story of the SAS and how they got started with the Long Range Desert Group in North Africa at the end of the midpoint of the Second World War. It's got a great cast. It's written by Stephen McKnight, who also did Peaky Blinders. I don't know how true to life it is, but it's really compulsive, watchable television. Do you watch this?
I've not seen it, but I'm aware of it. I was talking to my dad just the other day, and he was really enjoying the show. So 2 thumbs up then, I guess.
2 thumbs up. Seek it out. It's a proper rip-roaring tale, really, and there's enough of the truth of the creation of the SAS in there that I'm okay with it.
There's a thread of truth somewhere underneath.
A thread of truth. I can't believe they spoke back to their officers the way that for those watching the video feed, Paddy Mayne, who's a Northern Irish character who's based on a real person, obviously, and the way he performs, you think there's no way he could have got away with that in the British Army in the Second World War, but it's still fun.
Okay, fair enough.
Something else that's fun that I only started watching recently, in reference to Apple TV Plus good shows, is Bad Monkey. This passed me by entirely when it came out. Did you see this?
I saw a little bit of it. I don't know, I just didn't get into it. I saw like half of the first episode.
I hadn't realised it was written by Carl Hyacin, who's a novelist that I absolutely love. He's a resident of Miami, used to work for a newspaper there, Miami Sun or something like that, and has written sort of crime novels going back, 20, 30 years at this point, always from a very environmental point of view. Even back then, he could see the damage that people were doing to the Everglades and sort of the natural world out there. So he always gets a sort of very important environmental message into his books as well. He writes ridiculous characters in stupid situations, but writes it really well. The dialogue in it is fantastic. I've watched 2 episodes of this, and I think it's fantastic.
Okay. You obviously got into it a bit more than I did. I don't know. It just didn't really glue with me. I don't know why, because I quite like Vince Vaughn. I thought it looked interesting as a premise.
Yeah, it's really good, and the critics are with me at least. It's 93% on the Tomatometer on Rotten Tomatoes, so I feel on the right side of that.
Yeah, it scored really well.
It has. Something that hasn't scored quite so well is Dune Prophecy, which I've talked about before on this podcast. 70% with the critics, 66% with the audience. It's only 6 episodes. If you like the Dune universe, it's good. I won't go into it in great detail. It was one of our shows of the year last year. I'm presuming you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, Chris, but it's a really good universe. It's very well acted, and if you like that kind of thing, I'd say give it a chance.
I'm surprised the ratings are quite low on that, because a lot of people seem to really rate it.
Yeah, well, I certainly enjoy it. I read a book as well over the festive period, which I think is only the third book I've read this year.
Which is bonkers to me, because you used to be an avid reader and I was not, and I now appear to be an avid reader, and you've relaxed a little bit.
The thing is, I read for a living these days. I read and write for a living, so I think it's sort of changed my attitude.
Yeah, I can understand that.
This is Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's quite an interesting, quite in a Douglas Adams sort of way, about a service robot that kills his master. One day he's sort of a valet, a page type thing, and he cuts his throat with a straight razor. And then the rest of the book is trying to work out why he did this, what happened. It's about the breakdown of society. It's very funny. All the stuff we talked about with Trump and Apple and the way we treat artificial intelligence and all that kind of stuff is in there in a very humorous, high-level way. I was quite impressed with it. It's quite short. It's only like 400 pages or something like that. I got through it in, most of an afternoon. It's a good book. I think it's worth picking up.
You're a quicker reader than I am.
That was one of the reasons I could get through books quite quickly, as I am quite a fast reader when I actually focus and get on with it. It's quite easy to be more passive and just let TV and game content sort of wash over you, and that tends to be my default. It was quite nice to take my time to read a book, though.
I'm a big book reading escapist person. I just struggle when my kids keep interrupting me while I'm trying to read something. It sounds like quite an interesting premise, though.
It is, and it's funny,
like iRobot-esque.
Yeah, but it's funny is the thing.
Okay.
It has got that sort of Douglas Adamsy thread running through it.
Oh, cool.
Do you want to tell us about Missing You?
Yeah, and I just brought up the Rotten Tomatoes score, which has made me a little disappointed. So I think I mentioned this before Christmas. It's got one of the actresses out of Slow Horses in it. She's the main lead. And I started watching it last night. I'm 2 episodes in. And it's a typical Harlan Coben story where you really don't understand what the hell's going on. He seems to do this a lot with his stories. I've not read any of his books, but I was watching some of it last night and I thought it was actually quite good, and then I've come on here and the score is absolutely abominable, which has surprised me, because it's got a 50% tomato meter score and 25 on the popcorn meter, which would explain why when I logged into Netflix last night to have a look at it, it was buried somewhere, whereas normally Netflix push all their new hotness. But so far it's quite interesting, and I think she is a great actress. I think she was good in Slow Horses, and it's always interesting when you go and watch another show with the same actor in it. Can you envisage them being a different person? And I think she's done it really well, because sometimes you watch something like, it's hard to unsee them in that role they're really well known for. I just thought it was quite good, but I'm really disappointed by the scores.
This is how I felt when I was looking at the Dune scores. That's a really bad audience score, though, 25%.
It is bad, but I'm only 2 episodes in, and there's only 5 episodes, which also appealed, so it's not too long. I'm going to persevere with it, I think, because I've enjoyed the premise enough at the moment, but it depends how they land it, I think.
Fair enough. Tell us about Shogun.
So I put Shogun on to do my homework, and it didn't gel for me. I just couldn't get into it. And I know you raved about it. Other podcasters have raved about it. I don't know. Maybe it's that time, that period. I just wasn't into it. I'm sorry, but it's just, I thought it's 10 episodes. I can't get into it.
Well, you don't need to apologise. If you didn't like a thing, you didn't like a thing. I mean, that is what it is. I think you're in a minority of people that
I am in a minority, and this is often the way, I think. But it just didn't. I just wasn't feeling it. I'm sorry. And I've got so many other things to watch or read that I think you've got to pick the ones that really stick with you. You want to watch the next episode rather than you're trying to plough through it.
I think that's fair. I think you're wrong, but you're allowed to be wrong. Of course you are.
99% tomato score, it shows me I'm wrong, clearly, and 89% for the viewers. So clearly it is doing really well, and if you've got Disney Plus, you should check it out, but it just didn't stick for me.
It worked really well for me. I loved everything about it. From the costumes to the script to the music to the acting to it worked for me. It didn't for you. That's fine. I agree with you. If you're not enjoying a thing to that extent, then you shouldn't persevere with it. The only exception to that rule is Succession, which I really didn't enjoy, if you recall, and I pushed ahead and ended up really liking it. So it is possible to change your mind.
Succession's awesome.
Yep. So is Shogun.
Yeah, maybe I'll revisit it at some point when maybe I'll be in a different frame of mind in a couple of months' time. But
maybe so. I think that's it for media. Quite a lot of media, not surprising given the time of year it is. Should we do a game?
It's Christmas, isn't it? Yeah, let's do a game.
So, a game. I picked this up in the Steam sale over the Christmas period. I did need to go back to Satisfactory as well, as do you, I think. This is called Athena Crisis. It's like Advance Wars. If you ever had Nintendo DS, there was a game on there called Advance Wars, which is a bit like a Command and Conquer-like for the Nintendo DS, as was. This is a wider scale version of that. You've got units, you've got various types, you've got to apply strategy to them. The units can get experience and rank up as they go along and all the rest of it. It works on Mac, it works on PC, it works well on the Steam Deck. It's got a very unique graphical style. Very like a Nintendo DS game from back in the sort of mid-90s, as much as anything else. It was quite cheap. I don't know if the Steam sale's still on, but
it's not.
It's not. That's a shame. But even so, it's a well-animated, well-plotted game. Looking at the comments, it gets a lot harder as it goes on, and sort of a bit lack of variety in the later campaigns. But I've really quite enjoyed the time I've spent with it so far.
Yeah, that's good. So it's $15.99 if you were to buy it today. So it's not a lot for a game, is it, in this day and age when you're paying 70 quid for a PlayStation game? It looks interesting. I think some of the constant animation might annoy me a little bit, but it does look kind of cool. I don't know if I like the art style. It looks a bit like a tower defense game, but I'm assuming it's not a tower defense game.
It's not a tower defense game. You can move more freely than that.
Okay.
Anyway. There you go, Athena Crisis. At least I've got a game to talk about. I do need to go back and talk about Satisfactory, but other things have come along and I've had books to read.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I did go and play Mirror's Edge. I think I bought it for like £1 on Steam just to relive it because I used to love Mirror's Edge. It's held up okay. I think it was better on the PlayStation because I would have played it on the PlayStation, but I just picked it up on Steam on my PC. And I kind of like the art style of it at the time, but it's quite an old game now. When was it released? 2009? So, it's a good 15 years old. But just kind of cool, free sort of running game where you have to time your jumps and what have you. But I just thought I'd have a go and it held up okay.
Yeah, it's a good game. I like Mirror's Edge because it was made by DICE who made Battlefield as well, using the Frostbite engine from that, so it worked very well. Violence discouraged in it, sort of non-lethal takedowns and things like that are what they wanted to do. It was like a parkour game is probably the best way to describe it. There is a sequel of sorts, Mirror's Edge Cataclysm or something like that, I think that's also available, where they updated a lot of what was going with it. That might hold up a little bit better, but I think it was a bit of a commercial failure and DICE never went back and revisited it, which is a shame because it had quite a unique visual style.
It had a unique style, like you say. It wasn't really a violent game, it was more the parkour side of it. I just thought it was kind of cool, but yeah, I had a quick go on that. Quite enjoyed that for half an hour.
Very good. I will add it to the show notes so people can go and find it should they choose to. And in the meantime, do you want to tell us, should we do a main show?
Should we do the main show? So I was going to just talk a little bit about 3D printing. Now, I don't have a 3D printer, but I have a teenage son who has a 3D printer. And this was the one thing he put on his Christmas list, and he really wanted a 3D printer. And my son's quite a creative person. He does a little bit of gaming, but he really likes making things and doing things. So we bought him one of these. It's quite a bit of kit. And they had a good sale on, which was great. So it's reasonably big size printer. You can print something that's 25 centimeters across, 25 centimeters high, 25 centimeters deep. So a big square bed that you can see just in the bottom left of that picture. You can then have up to 4 different colors fed into it at any one time, and you can buy these filament rolls. And I've never 3D printed before, so it's quite an education to me. And you clip these on, and you feed the filament in, and then you just you find a model, and we're going to models in a minute. You set it printing, and then you come back a couple of hours later, and something's been created out of nothing. It's like magic. And here you go. It's a great video of it, as you can see on the YouTube video. But I was really impressed how they've taken something that's quite mechanical, not that straightforward, but actually made it really accessible. Most of your interactions with an app on your iPhone, so you set the printer up, how you clean it, align it, do things with it. and it's just a great bit of kit. It cost about £400, which is a reasonable amount of money, but the stuff we've been making out the back of it's been super interesting. So yeah, it's £2,990 if you don't get the add-on pack, but if you get the add-on that takes the 4 rolls, it's then £420. But it's just quite an impressive piece of kit, really well made. The app's great. You can just pick it up and get going with it, being a complete novice, and off you go. But I've never experienced a 3D print, and so I got my son to print me. Look at this. I now have a Mac Mini for those of you on the YouTube. So this is 3D printed. I just thought we'd try it out. You can see all the ports on the back. You can try it out for size. It's just a box for putting things in. So you go for a Mac Mini shaped box. And I thought it's quite a cool desk accessory that I'm going to do something with in my office. We've printed some clips. So I've got a Halo screen bar. And we've printed a clip just to raise it up above the camera on the studio display. So you can have it centrally aligned. But it's just a little clip. It took half an hour to print. It's just kind of cool. If you go to the other link in the show notes, there's one called Maker World. And this is where you can go and get all the models. Now, these aren't for commercial use, but these are for personal use. And you can go on here. You could type in Mac, or you could type in Apple or glass or Lego. You can get mounts to, I'm going to point the other way, to mount your car on the wall. As you can see behind me, I've got a car on the wall. You can get mounts that you bolt on the wall and it will sit underneath the wheels. It's just quite amazing how much stuff's out there. And there's quite a community here. These are models people have made, they've designed them, they've uploaded them, and they're there for you to go and make and do. And some of them you can modify. There's a studio piece of software which I haven't got my head around yet, where you can make your own CAD designs, and I'm keen to do that. But I was just super impressed with what you can make with it and how accessible it is. I did come close to ordering one for myself because my son wasn't letting me have a look. But I'm hoping when we get back to school and normality, we can have a go on it. But he's been enjoying it. He's been making fidget toys out of it. He's printed model aircraft off of it. It's just quite a cool piece of kit. The rolls that you see, those rolls of filament, they're about sub £20 to buy each colour. It depends on what you go for. And you get various packs, and they've got a bit of a sale on at the moment. But it's just super impressive. And like I say, the fact you can print off like a bracket to hold my screen bar. And we've printed off a bracket to hold a MagSafe mount. And then you can slide this underneath your monitor with a bit of double-sided tape on it. And you can have your phone just underneath your monitor while it charges. We've also done these little clips here for cable ties. So you can screw it onto the bottom of your desk. You've got a little gate on it. And you can, just little things like that. It's just quite cool. Proper blow my mind. And some of the detail and the quality, like we made one of those toys where you pull a thing out and it launches something up in the air like children would have had. And the models are all there, and there's such a community behind it. Yeah, really impressed with it. It was something I didn't think I would be as impressed with. I thought we'd get it, my son would enjoy it. He'd been wanting one for a long time. But actually super impressed with, like I say, the community, all the free stuff that's out there, and just how accessible it's now become. And they do a much smaller printer, by the way. They do a mini one which has one spool, much smaller bed, 18 centimetres square. So it can be a lot more accessible than the £400 price tag that you're seeing there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a world I'm interested in, sort of always glance sideways at. But then when I think about getting one, I really struggle to think of situations in which I'm going to use it a lot. I think if it was more into home labbing and I wanted to build things for the inside of my PC, like drive mounts and all that kind of stuff, to fit an odd space inside of a particular PC tower or something like that. And I've put a link in the show notes as well to Printables, which is full of this kind of stuff, that if you're looking for a particular bracket, which I'm sure the link you had as well, it has all these sort of various things to fit in that you can print out from a 3D printer, or shower curtain rings, or whatever it would be that you'd need a 3D printer print. But then I get stuck thinking, what else would I print with one of these things?
I think that's where I ended up, in that I was really taken with it. And like I said, I think when my boy's back at school, I can get a bit of time on it. And I want to have a go on the studio. I'm not a CAD person, but I want to try it. It's called the Studio software. You can get it for Mac and PC, and that's where you can draw things out. But they just made it really accessible, and I think it's kind of cool. And there's various mounts, as you can see in front of you now, to mount your Mac Mini. You can get a bracket to go on the back of the studio display, which previously I've bought one for about £40. You can just print one off, and it will cost you way less. So I think there's some cool stuff you can do with it. and it's just quite a neat bit of kit. It's just so accessible. Yeah, you can get various iPad stands as well, so you can hold it at the right angle that you want, maybe underneath your studio display or on the side or something by your bedside. There's loads out there. There's various ones where you can pop your phone in, and so it's at the right angle for standby mode on the iPhone. But there's just so much out there. You don't need to pay for all these. You can buy licenses for some of them if you do want to then commercially print them. And sell them on to others. But for home consumption, there's just loads out there. So yeah, we're quite enjoying it, I think, at the moment. And it's something that we're talking about, and I've learned a lot. And to be fair to my son, when it arrived, he knew exactly what to do to set up, because he'd watched a bunch of YouTube videos and was all over it in a heartbeat, whereas I must confess I'd done very little research.
Yeah, and when we talked about this before, when I was talking about the Framework laptop, one of the things they've done is put a recipe, for want of a better word, a CAD file onto this Printables website, so you can hold the motherboard. If you take it out of the laptop and you want to use it as a server or something like that, then you can print out a whole stand for that, so you can slide it into a rack or whatever else you want to do with it.
That's quite cool.
So I see the appeal. Is it messy? Is it hot? What's it like in power consumption?
So it gets hot. And what I didn't touch on actually is when you get your 3D printer, you can actually print things off to go with it. There's like a CAD file, so you can create a spool bin. So when there's excess spool, you can collect in a little bin that you've printed off, and various cable tidies and other brackets to mount things on it. But no, it does get warm. It's not that loud. It just seems to wear away. Occasionally it's got a fan on it to cool things down. It's just a really nice bit of kit, and it's not, like I say, not messy. It does obviously get hot because it's got to warm up. I don't know what my electricity bill is going to look like after this. But just a great bit of kit. For the amount of money it is, the quality of it is pretty good. Obviously it's not perfect, and I'm sure as you buy more high-end ones, and this company Bamboo Lab have got £1,000 printers as well. So you can go through, they've got something for most price ranges, I'd suggest.
Is it recyclable plastic?
I have no idea, I must confess. It's a good question.
I think that's probably quite an important thing about these.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that statement. I don't know, I'll have to have a look. But it is all plastics. You'd hope the filament is then recyclable.
There you go. That's follow-up for next week. Do 3D printers do recyclable plastic?
That's a good question. And you can get various different strengths of the filament that goes inside it. Obviously, you get all the different colours. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. And I'm a little bit taken with it. I'm more into it than I thought I would be.
No, I think I agree. I'm glad we've had this discussion because, like I say, it's something that's been kicking around in the back of my head for a while is, if I got one, what would I do with it? I think the initial complexity of the very first models where you had to set them all up, you had to make sure the trays were perfectly balanced, otherwise they'd print incorrectly and all sorts of things, and I presume they've got better. Yeah,
this one does levelling, the tray or the bed that magnetically attaches to it. It's pretty cool. You can make it run faster, but then you might get not quite such a quality print. You can get different size tips. So we've got like a 0.4 one, but you can get a smaller tip if you want to do finer things. There's just so much you can do with it. I think we're going to have enough just to tweak it. And like I say, if we can learn to do our own drawings, I think that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, if that's probably a good thing. And again, a lot of the creators I watch on YouTube do that they go, okay, I've got the space, I need this particular widget to fit this Hujima flip, and they just put it together in the CAD program and they print it, and off they go from there. So it's obviously entirely attainable for you to do it.
Yeah, I wish I'd learned CAD in a previous life, I think, because I opened the app and I was a bit lost at sea, but there's YouTube tutorials out there, so that's what I was going to go and do, is just how do I draw like a box or something and do that. But it's a very impressive piece of kit.
Very cool. I think that's very interesting, and we'll do a bit of follow-up on that as the weeks and months go by to find out what you're using it for as well. Yeah,
as you see more things on my wall that have got they've got mounts on it, because you can, like I say, print off Speed Champion mounts that are the right wheel spacing, so you can hang cars on walls or brackets for monitors and stuff. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it.
I think you need to get some for your desk so rockets don't fall.
Yeah, so before the show, I have the NASA Lego rocket, which I put on my desk, and I raised my desk up, and now I've only got half a rocket, sadly.
It's a Saturn 2.5.
I'm gutted because it's now all littered across the floor. So that's a problem for another day, though.
I felt that was a better joke. There we go. Shall I tell you a little bit of stuff I got for Christmas?
Yeah, go on then.
So I picked up, or I was given, a Stream Deck. A Stream Deck is like a secondary console thing that sits under your computer. If you think of it as like the Mac Mini Touch Bar, the MacBook Pro Touch Bar, but done better, then that's probably a decent place to start. So what I have is a Stream Deck 2. There are a variety of these devices that come with, some have knobs, some have less buttons on them or whatever. But the long and the short of it is that you can assign buttons on the device, they're actual push buttons. They're not touch sensitive buttons. You've actually got to push them in and they engage to whatever action you can think of on your Mac effectively. So it comes as default with apps, links, screenshot, tutorials, emoji, a volume up, a volume down, and a mute button. And then you can add as many screens into it as you want. So I think it's a 3x5. You get 15 buttons on the first screen. And you can press like an advanced button that will take you onto another page where you can define more. You can set them to do, well, almost any action you can think about. So if you've got a script or something that you want to run based on it, you can create that script, assign it to the button, and it will run through it. But lots of people have made plugins for them as well. So, for example, OBS that I use to record this podcast with, or the video part of the podcast, has got all sorts of actions for changing scenes, moving things around, bringing in lower thirds. Like if I wanted to title you and I as we went through that, you could do all sorts of sophisticated things built in with buttons to this, rather than me having to find the menus in the app to click them. So you could like have copy and paste if when I'm clicking around on this, if you didn't want to see the right click menu, which you don't even know if you see on the video, that could be assigned to a button, so I wouldn't need to do it. Which you couldn't do screen keyboard buttons for anyway, but the point of this is you can do more complex things and have them to hand and illustrate them with an icon that you see properly on the Stream Deck. So before we start the podcast this morning, I've created a button called Podcast. When I press that, it launches Insta360 for video recording, Audio Hijack for the audio recording, FaceTime so I can talk to you, and I've built in delays to them so they start up in the right order, giving time to grab the microphone for all the audio capture and all that kind of stuff as well. And when I get a bit more time, I'll figure out how I can actually go to the right setting and start the recording and do all that kind of stuff as well. So it's a very flexible thing you can do a lot with.
That's quite cool. I quite like the sound of that. It's a great bit of kit, actually, isn't it? I think bringing that shortcut mentality to it. And like you say, you see a lot of people use it when they're filming themselves so they can have their workflow there and they're not wasting time hunting around for something, because that doesn't make for good TV.
Yeah, you could assign multiple cameras, for example. So if you're, a YouTuber like Marquez or someone like that who's got an overhead camera to look at the product that you're doing and the one that you're talking to the audience with there, you can just click a button on that and it'll automatically assign it. Maybe move the microphone to that as well. So in the same way that your 3D printer, the sky's the limit for your imagination for what you can automate. And if you want to use it really simply as just a web page launcher, for example, so I've assigned one button on page 2 to Heimdall, which is my internal web page where I monitor all my home lab services and all the rest of it. I can click that and it's just there for me. So it's really nice that it's that flexible that you can just use it as an app launcher if you want to, or you can do something a bit more profound with it.
Yeah, I've always wanted this for my iPad, but obviously it's not iPad friendly.
And this is the Stream Deck 2, which like I say, has these 15 buttons. There's a Stream Deck 1, which is older and has less. And then there's I forget the actual designation of it, but there is one that has knobs on it as well. So you can use it for editing and changing volume around and doing all that kind of stuff too.
Oh, that's kind of cool. And you can get a pedal, I think, as well, can't you?
And Logitech have got a device that looks like this now. It's called the Command Console or something else, which is just a big button, a big scrubber, effectively, like a volume knob, which you can assign to any program or whatever you want. So you could use it in, say, DaVinci Resolve for scrolling through your timeline or adjusting your button, and it's context sensitive, so depending on what program you're in, you're able to move it around. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting device, and if you can think of enough programs where you'd want to have this sort of functionality, then I think it's worth a look.
It reminds me of the Griffin PowerMate I used to have, where you plug a USB volume control into your Mac, and you could, this was, I don't know, 15 years ago, you could just adjust the volume on it. It's great to see some of this. I think it's nice to see some of this sort of stuff making a comeback, because we do like to customize our devices, I think, and I wish there was more of this out there. So I think it is good. We're starting to see a bit of software coming through, and people like accessories, and you like to make it unique. So I think it looks really cool.
It is really cool, and they go all the way up to the Stream Deck Studio, which is like thousands of buttons on it. So there's a lot of customization. I think if you're the kind of person who wants a button to do a thing or has a sequence of actions it needs doing, I think it's worth it. And the Logitech one's very good as well. It was quite affordable, I think. It was less than £100, I think, for the Stream Deck 2, and you occasionally see them on sale as well. So it's a good little device.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. App of the week.
Go for it.
So app of the week this week is uBlock Origin. You've talked before, I think you pay for Magic Lasso Ad Block or something like that for the iPhone. Am I right?
Yeah, AdBlock Pro or some useless name like that.
This is uBlock Origin, which if you're a Firefox browser user, blocks lots of tracking and adverts and all sorts of stuff on the website. It's open source, which is good. It works with all variants of Firefox. It used to work with Chrome as well, but Google have moved on from Manifest version 2, which is their sort of internal technology for ad tracking, to version 3. And version 3 is a problem. When it goes to ad blockers, Google don't want you to block ads because they're an advertising company, which is why you should use something else. So for Firefox, for me, this works really well. And this in combination with my Pi-hole when I'm at home works fantastically. But I'm not always in my house. I'm obviously in the office or I'm in a coffee shop occasionally. And this gives you that extra level of blocking. It integrates really well with Zen, which is my current browser of choice. Viewers of the YouTube will be familiar with this because I'm using it at the moment, back off Safari. And I just really like it. I think it's great. You've got an open source plugin that does all this ad blocking for you, and try it out.
It looks cool. I was just about to comment on the browser. I struggle to know which browser you're using because they all look very similar these days. It's a bit sad in a way, isn't it?
They do, but you just want it to get out your way and surf the web, right?
True. It needs to have minimal Chrome and minimal interference.
It does. Thing of the week?
So I've put Taskmaster's New Year's treat in as my thing of the week. I watched this with my kids. It was about 45 minutes long without adverts. It was just nice to watch something and not have to commit to 10 episodes. And so it was just really good. And we in the family really enjoyed it. Good bit of family TV. I assume you've partaken.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times actually. I think it was very good. Good celebrities. I often think with the celebrity ones that I could watch a whole series with these people. Just limiting it to one episode isn't good enough. I want to see them all. They were good. I thought Hannah Fry was excellent. I thought the winner, and I almost gave the winner away there, was very deserving based on everything. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think Martin Lewis is a bit OCD though.
Well, yeah, he blew my mind. He does 25,000 steps a day. I mean, how is that man getting his job done every day if he's doing that? But he's obviously doing all right. But he's clearly got something. We've all got stuff, but 25,000 steps a day, he's not a finance guy, isn't he, here in the UK?
He is a finance guy. He's the money-saving expert, so best advice on loans and all that kind of stuff he's the man to go to. Fair enough, I'll let it go as it's our first episode of the new year, that it should belong in media and isn't really a thing of the week, but I'll let you have it.
It's my thing of the week.
Okay.
It's a thing, and I enjoyed it this week. I think that's exactly what. But my idea behind Thing of the Week was it's not always going to be an app or a film. It's the thing that I've enjoyed most this week.
All right, I'll let it go. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or he's at g5maniac at bsky.social on Blue Sky, or you can contact me on Mastodon. I'm at _CGP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email, wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.